So a number of you sent in this story about Chris Jones, C Jones 3D on Twitter, complaining to nvidia. I wonder if nvidia considers, when they're busy plagiarizing artwork to advertise their GPUs, the possibility that the artist they stole it from might actually be in the market for a new GPU. And then he's got some links down here. Here is a photo, looks like a digitally created image of an eye, of a human eye looking to the right. It's very detailed, and it has a copyright 2014 Chris Jones notice and his website on the bottom right. And then he posts this screenshot from what looks like NVIDIA's website about GeForce RTX. And the virtual reality section has what appears to be a very similar looking eye, looking left, but it's been composited or composed into an image that makes it kind of look like the eye is seeing digital information or seeing a heads-up display or something, and everything's been given kind of a green tone to it. So, is that copyright infringement, or is that enough transformation, or so little was used, or some other exception applies that it's not copyright infringement? Well, let's dive into this a little bit further. You may know that I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and that's why we look at copyright on this channel. I also look at other things, other interesting legal news pieces, happenings, so please like and subscribe. And thank you, of course, to all of my supporters that make this video and all of my videos on my channel possible. So going back and forth between these two images, there's a couple levels of copyright infringement. Now, there really isn't a different punishment for different levels of copyright infringement. This is more so the first step. Yes or no, is there copyright infringement? So the first thing I want to look at is just sort of the plausibility of the whole thing. If you were going to file a lawsuit, it has to be plausible. What's likely to be the outcome just from a quick glance? So I want to look at details. What are the details that I can match? We've got a couple individual hairs up here in the upper right. We've got a nice detailed reflection in the iris of maybe a window with maybe like a pole, a telephone pole, or some kind of horizontal or vertical pole crossing the image of the window. And then we've got a very detailed vein, or certainly not an artery, but a very detailed blood vessel going through the eye here. Let's look for those elements in the other one, in the other image. So first off, I don't see any sort of detailed vein or blood vessel. But I do see a similar, if not exact, duplicate of the window reflection in the iris with the two poles. One pole is going across the image or the window. One pole is kind of going halfway across. That looks exactly the same to me. So that indicates to me that there might be direct copying here. Now, if there's direct copying, that's pretty much copyright infringement, unless you have a fair use. There could also be de minimis copying, or maybe you could argue that the underlying author didn't have a copyright, didn't own anything. So let's see if we can answer some of those questions. Now, in his previous image, Mr. Jones gave us his website. If we go to his website, it says universal human, now even more universal, customizable, extensible, rigs, base meshes, and textures for Blender. So he makes stuff for people to use in Blender. Here's a $198 body and face rig, complete rigged base mesh. Okay, so now I really do believe that this guy could make this image out of Blender. So here's sort of some of his rigs demonstrated on his website. It seems like he puts a lot of creative input into making his digital face and body rigs, and maybe even put a lot of time and effort, which does not protect copyright, but creativity in making his irises and things like that. So now, does he own irises? No. But if he makes an exact digital sculpture of a human eye, and then NVIDIA uses that exact image, that's not any kind of defense. There's no, it's the human body defense, you can't copyright the human body. he's not saying that he owns human eyes, and he's not using a photo of a human eye. He created a digital artwork or digital sculpture that accurately represents a human eye. He can't claim other digital sculptures independently created, but he can claim exact copies, especially copies that copied his file and didn't remake it on its own. So then going back to these images for comparison, assuming these are duplicates of each other, is there some defense? There would be first the de minimis defense. Is this use such a small use that NVIDIA didn't commit copyright infringement? Well, no. Chris Jones is a digital artist. He makes his money selling his artwork on his website. So it's not like he's just a hobbyist who creates things without looking for pay and just is looking for a cash grab because NVIDIA is a big company. This person does license their works, has prices for their works, and then it appears NVIDIA used the image. Now, what happens if NVIDIA hired an artist who bought one of Chris Jones' digital rigs and they rendered their own image exactly like Chris's? So if they copied the image and then removed the blood vessel and then made this composite image, that's copyright infringement. If it's not a fair use, we'll go over fair use in a moment. And if they bought his digital rig, loaded it up in Blender, rendered it, and it just happened to be the default pose or something like that, and they rendered the exact same eye and iris and everything using his digital model, that might be a license. That might be not copyright infringement. Well, what about fair use? This is some kind of transformative, isn't it? It's a new purpose. It's a new thing. His original photo wasn't being used to advertise NVIDIA. It wasn't being used to show cool heads-up display or virtual reality display in front of an eye. It was just a render of an eye. Isn't that a new purpose? Well, no, we're not talking about him creating the eye for political awareness, and then somebody else goes and uses it for to make a message about something else. We're talking about a commercially made product that was potentially not purchased, but then used. So that might be some kind of different purpose here, but it's not the kind of different purpose that copyright and fair use recognizes. The second fair use element is not going to apply to anything because that's the nature of the works. So they're both in the same category. That's not really going to weigh in anybody's favor. The third fair use factor is how much did you use? And it looks like they used the whole thing. So it looks like they needed a source image for this composite, and they used Chris Jones' image as their base image for the composite. If they used the base image, that means they used the whole thing, and that is definitely in favor of Chris Jones. And then the fourth factor, I think, is the defining one, or the turning point, where if you had a question, this one should answer it. And that's the market usurpation. Do you step on the market? By using this work this way, did they cause the lack of a sale from Chris Jones? And it appears that they did. It appears that they should have licensed, it appears they should have purchased this to use it as a composite image, as opposed to if they were writing a paper or making a video about how Chris Jones creates his irises and how creative he is, and like making a documentary about it or something, then maybe they could talk about this image and say, oh, we want to show you this image because we're going to comment on it, we're going to criticize it, or we're going to give it new life, new purpose, etc. That's the kind of transformation we're talking about. That would be more permissible, if not totally permissible. Copying his image when you should have licensed it instead does step on the market and cause the loss of a sale of his image. On the other hand, they're not distributing the image for others to use. They're just using it for marketing in their advertising. So that's one level of bad, but it's not the same thing as if they were giving everybody his artwork. But it is being published on, a thousands of times per second basis on their website. So I don't think it's a fair use. I don't think it's a de minimis use. I do think it's copyright infringement, assuming that they didn't purchase the digital model and then render it themselves and happen to have the same pose with the same reflection in the eye. But then again, maybe the rig comes with that reflection in the eye or something. I don't know. Maybe there's an example file and that's what they used. So yeah, I think NVIDIA committed copyright infringement here. And I think Chris Jones has a pretty good case. Hopefully they can work it out. Maybe NVIDIA will send him his new RTX card for free in return for an agreement not to sue. Let me know what you think of that one in the comments below. Thought that was a really interesting short one for a Sunday morning. They'd email back, here's the license fee we paid, done. Well, that works if you paid for it before you used it. If you paid for it after, especially after the artist noticed, then I think you're screwed. Thanks for watching! Special thanks to my top supporters in September: John Steele, Eevi, Spirit Bear, Ugly Grill, Torpedan, Gutbrodj, PureMagma, Eric Tams, TechTechPotato, The Blood-Soaked Survivors, Wyatt Calandro, King Aries, and Kyle Siefring. You can support Lawful Masses on patreon.com/ljfrench, sponsors.com/law, through YouTube memberships, and through Floatplane subscriptions. Join me for my weekly live production stream on twitch.tv/lawfulmasses on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern US time. I hope everyone has a great week. I love you all. Bye.